everyone, and a big shout out to my fellow HR practitioners. But trust me, my session today has nothing to do with HR, and then you will realize probably everything to do with HR. So, why would I start the session today with intelligence? Last month, a very interesting news uh, overtook us everywhere on every social media, most likely LinkedIn, and it was about something known as Chat GPT. I'm sure all of you would have also come across it. What is ChatGPT? A tool which is so advanced that it can produce works of literature like almost as good as human, if not accurate. We all know that with what started in customer service like chatbots, AI is now rapidly becoming very commonplace in assisting us with how we take decisions. The keyword here is assisting. But with the pace with which the technology is evolving, it's not so far that it will start AI, the concept of AI will start taking up the task of taking decisions as well, leaving us behind and overtaking our mind and ability to take rational decisions. For example, driverless cars. So I'm not going into that technology details, but this is where our world is progressing towards. So we understand that today we are progressing towards becoming a very rapid, digitally intelligent society. On the other hand, intelligence is very different from consciousness. In a world that is becoming intelligent, our levels of consciousness have started to go down. We are becoming herd-like. We are following the crowd, unable to take decisions on our own, unable to differentiate between what is right, what is wrong. So much concerned about things that are physical, worldly, and materialistic that we have forgotten about the existence and discovery of our own soul, or Atma, if you call it, and the great supreme power that surrounds us. In every domain of life, in every profession, you would see that the parts that I spoke earlier, physical, worldly, materialistic, these have become our guiding factors for making decisions, for choosing the way we are living our life. And what is it resulting into? It is resulting into misery, depression, a feeling of unworthiness, inadequacy, greed, insecurity, and probably the list is endless. And this is why Swami Vivekananda is relevant today. My first thought when I got the chance to interact with all of you students was to share about the ideology of Swami Vivekananda. Let's take a moment to look at this photo, okay? And my question to all of you is, what is striking about this photo? Is there anything that strikes to you personally about this photo? Let's start with the eyes too. The eyes are focused. They are looking into the distance, and this is clearly the gaze of a visionary, not somebody who is tensioned or worried about something going on. But this is very stable, a very focused glance. Let's see the face. The face is soft, saumyata in Hindi as we call it. There are no creases of worry, anxiety on his face. The face is balanced. There are no overt emotions. There is no exaggerated feeling of high or low. There is very simplicity on the face. It's very clear. Just be. Look at the stance, the posture. The spine is very, very straight. There is no slouching. Look at the arms, which are folded inwards. This is not a sign of defense. It is a picture of completeness, that here I am, as I am, standing here, I am whole and I am complete. We all recognize who this person is. This young monk was born 160 years ago, in a world that probably looked like nothing what it is today. It was an India that was poor, starving, and most importantly, gulam. It has been 120 years since his death. Several generations have come and gone in that time frame. And most of us, I think, are familiar with who he was, his life history, what he did. Many of us have studied or at least seen educational institutes, hospitals, buildings, roads in his name. But the question is, more than the name, are we also familiar with his teachings, his thoughts, and the principles that he stood for? The book Vivekananda Reader is essentially a collection written by him on various subjects. There is a full, complete works of Swami Vivekananda, but this is more of a beginner's guide, if I may call it, to start getting familiarity with his thoughts and ideas. So the first and most important thing to know is Swami Vivekananda was not connected with materialism in any way, but by spirituality. And that's how he became enlightened all over the world. Why? Because his thoughts were very powerful. The words were few, but the thoughts were powerful. And what was the mind behind Swami Vivekananda? It is the eternal thought, also known as Advait Vedant. Advait stands for singularity. This is honestly the theme that resonates most and most deeply with me. This is a photo that I took in Calcutta, I think 5 years back, when in the same place when this book was presented to me, and I saw this board there, in the corridors of the classroom, and it is just struck with me since then. One of the greatest themes of Advait Vedanta is the oneness of life, oneness of everything. Swami Vivekananda continuously says that all our misery in different forms comes through ignorance. So what is this ignorance? Question is normal. The ignorance is our notion of multiplicity. When we think that you and I are different, man and man are different, nation and nation are different, earth and moon are different. But aren't earth and moon different? Out of this idea of separation between one atom and the other comes all misery. Vedanta says that this separation actually does not exist. It is not real, and it is merely an illusion. Maya also is something that is more common in the language of today's world. It is apparent only on the surface, but in the heart of things, it is complete unity. If you go below the surface, you will find unity between people and people, between life and life, between races, rich, poor, man, animal, everywhere. And we'll come to this later, but the theme of a lot of religions is also this oneness, that all Jeev Shakti or Pran Shakti is actually same. And this is what he picked up, that happiness can only come once we first start understanding the oneness of life. And this is also the time when anything positive or negative also appears same. The emotions that are of joy or of ecstasy, excitement are same as the emotions that are of hurt, sadness, and misery. So the total bliss, and this is where his name also is most important, Vivekananda. The bliss is in the rational mind. So the entire circle of all emotions and all experiences that we go through are actually pointing towards the same thing. And if we understand that, then we will be happy eternally. Why so? The physical life that we see it is just a vibration. We all have studied physics. We know E is equal to mc square. Einstein was intelligent enough to prove it in a way that majority of us who follow Western education understand. But even in Vedanta, in metaphysics, we understand that the world is one. The spiritual, material, mental, and all the energies, kinetic, potential, everything it's not separate. It is the same. And the same laws of physics hold true in the world of spirituality. For all the students who have studied science, you will understand there are so many parallelism between physics, the outer gross world, and the inner spiritual world. The energies of the mind and the energies that we see outside are same. It's just that the reflection, because the world is in a different way of, on a different plane rather, the shape and size and appearance remains different. On the other hand, it is actually the same. When you think of yourself as a body, you forget that you are a mind. When you think of yourself as a mind, you forget the body. We all are of certain ages. Sometimes you might recollect your childhood and feel, okay, I was a completely different person then. And then you think, okay, 10 years later or 20 years later, I'm going to be a very different person. But is that so? Your past you, your present you, and your future you are going to be the same. It's just that the outer appearances of your life and maybe physical body change. And it may seem different, but when it's quite outside and you are just talking to yourself and being with yourself, you realize, okay, I was the same person. Maybe I've grown and matured and understood emotions better, but I am the same person. So here is where he tells a very interesting story. The story is about a frog, because the underlying question is, if everything is same and this is a natural truth, then why are there causes of differences and disagreements? So the story goes like this, and I'm going to read it verbatim from the book. So once upon a time, a frog lived in a well. It had lived there for a long time. It was born there, brought up there, and it was a little small frog. It went on living its life and surviving happily. It had all the resources to live. So one day, another frog that lived in the sea came and fell into the well. So our frog, the frog in the well, asked, the new frog, where are you from? So the new one says, I am from the sea. Our frog says, the sea? How big is that? Is it as big as my well? And to show how big my well is, our frog took a leap from one side of the well to the other side. So the frog of the sea said, my friend, how do you compare the sea with your little well? So the frog took a bigger leap and asked, okay, is this your sea this big? The frog of the sea was exasperated. He was like, what nonsense you speak to compare the sea with your well? So the frog of the well said, well, nothing can be bigger than my well. There can be nothing bigger than this. This fellow is a liar. So, turn him out. And this is the difficulty. The difficulty is, I am from one religion. I sit in my own little well, and I think that the entire world is my little well. A person from another religion sits in his or her own little well, and so on. This is the story that Swami Vivekananda narrated in his Chicago address at the World Parliament of Religions. Many of you might have read that he took a very big journey for the first time, and in America, where this conference was organized to bring all the religions of the world together, he was not invited. He had absolutely no funds. He was a monk, but somehow with the courage and conviction that he had, that he wanted to showcase the philosophy of Vedanta to the world. He did a lot of hard work, and God was, I would say, with him, that he managed to make an appearance at that parliament, and he became the #1 speaker, absolutely uninvited, from a poor country like India. So since we're talking about religion, and I specifically chose religion as an area to focus in this talk, because these days we do see outside in media and in the world around us so much differentiation and hatred that is going on in the way of religion. Even in this audience today, we would have people from different backgrounds, and it is usual, common to have a difference, you versus me kind of an ideology. How do we change this mindset? And this is somewhere Swami Vivekananda has been extremely, extremely clear in his thoughts. Religion is something that has probably brought a lot of blessings to the world. Different religions. In their own lives, people get a lot of energy from following different religions. But at the same time, religion has also been the originator of so much horror and brutality. It has on one side stood for peace and love, and on the other side for hatred. So Vivekananda says that there is a tremendous life power in all the great religions of the world. Most of the religions, as we speak, are gaining power and are multiplying. So he asked the question that how can all these varieties be true? If one thing is true, its negation should ideally be false. How can contradictory opinions be true at the same time? So he asks, okay, let me ask you this question. Are all the religions of the world really contradictory? Not in the external forms, not in the buildings, in the languages, in the rituals, in the books, but the internal soul of every religion. He says that every religion has a soul behind it, and that soul may differ from the soul of another religion, but it is not contradictory. On the other hand, it is a supplementary activity. Once we understand this, our entire mindset of looking at people who are different to us changes. A lot of us in HR right now have a focus on building organizations that are diverse and inclusive. And we struggle with the definition of inclusive. Actually, I would say inclusion is this. When you forget about the external and you only focus on internal, it's all inclusive, because we were never different to begin with. He says that our watchword, keyword to operate, should be acceptance, not tolerance. He clearly says in his own book, he says tolerance is blasphemy. Tolerance means that I think you are wrong and I'm right, but I'm just allowing you to live. Vivekananda believes in acceptance, accepting all religions that were in the past, worshipping with them. And he says that I worship God with every one of them in whatever form they worship him. He says, be rational, not personal. Don't personify the religion, any religion practices. Persons appeal to emotions, and that is why a lot of time you will see crowd following the person, because we are human beings. We have a big energy, which is an emotive or emotional energy, and people appeal to our emotions. And I'm sure that is the same pattern you can see in your relationships as well. Do you appeal to the person in your friends and families, or do you appeal to the principles that the said person stands for? He says that principles appeal to something higher in us, not to emotions, but to our calm judgment. And this is why principles conquer in the long run, not people. There is another topic which he has covered in detail, and in the interest of time, I will keep it short. So I've just picked up some of the themes that I find most, probably suitable for all of you in your student life right now. You are going to step into a world which is going to throw you off in different directions. And this is why it is important to understand your own direction of life. The direction of life for every individual is going to be different. This is something Vivekananda says right from the top. He says principles can be same, but every person will have their own way to achieve what they want to achieve. Yoga, it is not yoga, it is not asana, okay? It is simply the meaning and method of joining man and God. And here when I say God, it means the supreme power. You can treat it the way you want to. Whatever appeals to you, that is God for you. You can go on with your own definitions of man, woman. Obviously, when I say man, it means all individuals. This is not a gender conversation at all. And yoga will fit in with every definition. If one way doesn't suit you, another way. At this time, what is important for you is to see what are the different 4 parts of yoga, what is their interrelations to each other. Whether you should follow it or not, that is completely your own judgment. But before even starting to follow somebody, you should know what the theory is. Practice always comes later. So this is consider the next 5 minutes as more like a theory exercise. Essentially, yoga is our journey or our endeavor to be free. By joining with God, you become free, because then you are not bound by the external world of Maya. Irrespective of which method you choose, there are only 2 chief foundations of this entire exercise, of this liberation. The first is Abhyas and the second is Vairagya. Abhyas stands for practice. Vairagya is non-attachment to life. It does not necessarily mean becoming a monk and doing tapasya in the jungle. No, it is living your life but not being attached to it. So now let's just see what are these 4 parts of yoga. The first one is Karma Yoga. As the name suggests, Karma Yoga is the model of work. Nature in our way is composed of 3 forces. You would have heard this over and over in different forms. Sat, Raj and Tamsikta or Tam. And these 3 forces are manifested in the physical world. In every way, you can look into food, you can look into the world, you can look into people around you, you can look into yourself, you will find these 3 forces inside you. What are these? I'll start with Raj first, Raj or Rajas. Raj is activity. So, being in a constant state of activity. Tamas, inertia, complete dullness, inactivity. And Sat is the balance between the 2, which is equilibrium. This is a very, very broad definition, and I have, for the purpose of this talk, stuck to the definition which he has put in his book. But there is, and this is something I genuinely, I would suggest, do understand what these mean in different scenarios. It would help you a lot in taking decisions, corporate or otherwise. These forces reside under every individual, and you will find at different times in your own life, one of these forces becoming more and more predominant. Sometimes when tamas prevails, we become lazy, inactive, dull. And a collection of all these forces results in an environment that is more predominant about a type of energy. I'll give you an example. If you go to a temple which is peace and quiet and not frequented by people a lot, okay, you will find an element of equilibrium and peace. Even it appears calm, you will find there is a balance in the place. On the other hand, in places like shopping malls, in places like restaurants, pubs, you will find the element of Rajsikta and Tamsikta. So first understand these three and then try to find examples. Karma Yoga deals with these three factors by teaching us what they are and then utilizing this framework to do our work better. The only call out that he says is all work should be done without any desire to enjoy the fruits. Jo Gita also says, Karam karo, phal ki ichha mat karo. Be concerned with actions and not with fruits. And this ties up with non-attachment to life. That while you are doing work, you do work for the sake of it, not for the attachment and not for the fruits. If you are studying, study for the study of it, not to get marks. You will get marks. If you are trying to study for marks, you will definitely get marks. But whether will you get knowledge or not, that remains to be answered. So do with actions. The second one is Raj Yoga. Raj Yoga kya hai? Raj Yoga is about, it tells us how do we observe the internal states. Essentially, it's a way to manage and observe our own mind. So from the childhood, most of us are trained to pay attention to things that are external, but not necessarily internal. What do I mean by external? Eyes, the five senses which open outwards. Our eyes, our ears, our nose. It's an outward way of perceiving the world. And that is why at this age, at this life, we have nearly lost the faculty of observing the internal mechanism because nobody has ever taught us this, or very, very few of us are lucky enough to get this. So there are many, many instruments to see the external world, but is there any instrument which can help us analyze our own mind? That is focusing inwards, and that's what Raj Yoga is. The third one is Bhakti Yoga. It is about complete nishtha and samarpan to our chosen deity. It doesn't matter what religion you are. Bhakti Yoga is all about leaving yourself behind and in a way becoming one with the God. The only call out and disadvantage here is in its lower form, if it is not done well, there can be an element of fanatism, which we see these days because there are groups which are fighting religious wars, and it takes over our rationalism and powers of our own judgment. The last one is Gyan Yoga, which is the knowledge that every human soul, the beginning and general history, is the same. Birth, growth, development, decay, and death. This is the same sequence. Everything in nature follows. The only difference is time. For some species, this time can be completed in a day. Some others in years. More others, centuries, millenniums. But once we understand this cycle, do we start to utilize our own faculties of Gyan Yoga. Vivekananda's message to youth. The first one is anything that makes you weak physically, intellectually, and spiritually, reject it as poison. Truth can never make you weak. It will only strengthen you. You may lose some of the materialistic rewards in the short place. And trust me, this is something all of us are going to deal with in corporate world, because there will be times when integrity becomes a question mark. But this is your test of deciding. And the other ones are self-explanatory. Never divide. There is no hierarchy in souls. And then the last, which is sacrifice will be necessary. What sacrifice it is? It is a sacrifice of our own ichhain. That's it. Our own desires. Just if following our desires can bring misery, and this is something that will go back to the entire circle and we are back to square one. All power is within you. You can do everything and anything. And with that, my dear friends, thank you so much for this time.